Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Hamamoto with you today. And I thank you for joining me today, the day after Christmas. I hope you had a wonderful meal with your friends and family. I work through the holidays. I work every day, no matter what. Doesn't really deter me, holidays, whatnot. And in keeping with that habit of mine, I did indulge myself in looking at a CD set that I purchased not long ago, not anticipating the discoveries that I'm about to share with you this evening. And it's a 3 album collection of Sonny and Cher. Their first 3 albums on Atco: Look at Us, The Wondrous Worlds of Sonny and Cher, and In Case You're in Love. And there's some bonus tracks. And there's some photos in here. It's pretty interesting. I know a little bit about their career. I was a teenager, if you can believe that. I was once a teenager. I was a teenager when they were at their height, and they were famous for working with. Well, he wasn't notorious then. Back then, he was declared a genius by Tom Wolfe, the writer who died a few years ago. But he was the great producer, Phil Spector. He was held in such regard that the Beatles brought him in to assist them on the Get Back project, which, by the way, Peter Jackson, the New Zealand director, the gentleman who directed the Lord of the Rings series, is about ready to release a movie, a documentary on the Beatles, that session, and I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, Sonny and Cher rode in on the heels of the revolution, so to speak, that was rung in by the Beatles, this pop revolution. But they also were very much, especially Sonny, whose real name was Salvatore Bono. He was Sicilian. And Sherilyn Sarkeesian, she's Armenian American. But Sonny in particular was influenced by Bob Dylan. And you can tell that by his slightly stylized, I would say overwrought vocals. Even as a teenager, I said, this guy's trying too hard to sound like Dylan. Nonetheless, he was a fairly good, I would say, second tier composer, second tier writer, a songwriter. He wrote a good number of the songs on the album. They did a lot of covers as well. He wrote the famous, I guess it might be their theme song, because they ran it during their comedy show, which I'll talk about in a moment. He wrote I Got You, Babe. He wrote Baby Don't Go, which I think is probably his best song of the 3. And he wrote the famed song The Beat Goes On. And this song is where I draw my title. Anyway, I started out innocently listening to this, and I recalled some notes I made years ago on the mysterious death of Sonny Bono. And I decided to take this day to follow up on it and really go dig a little bit deeper into his death today for you. And I'd like to share with you the interesting results that I've come up with. And of course, I join you as fellow citizen researchers to extend the analysis and the inquiry further. In fact, there might even be a cause to call for a reinvestigation of the death of Sonny Bono. He was, after all, a U.S. representative representing I think it's the 44th district in the state of California. And before that, he was a municipal mayor. He was the mayor of Palm Springs. So he had a very, very really interesting individual, very intelligent, very smart, very creative, very ambitious. And he represents all that America, I believe, used to stand for. And he met an unfortunate end, which I'll talk about in a moment. And this unfortunate end, by the way, and this is the reason why I'm bringing this analysis to you today, is because it's quite relevant for what's going on in Washington, D.C. It is very much connected with the attempted takedown of the American Republic by engaging in 4 years of character assassination of President Donald J. Trump, and the more recent attempt to steal the election from the American people and placing the cutout figure, Joe Biden, in the office of the presidency. The whole world is watching the outcome of this disputed election. And I hope and pray, and this is, I spent my time in meditation, to tell you the truth, and in prayer on Christmas Day, praying for a resolution that will enable the American people to experience another couple of centuries in relative freedom. And I say relative freedom because the US has had its problems for sure, and there will be more. But never have we seen a crisis that we are experiencing right now in 2020 on December 26, 2020. So given that preface, let me talk a little bit about Sonny and Cher and the details surrounding the death of Representative Sonny Bono. He died on January 5th. The anniversary is coming around fairly soon, January 5th, 1998. And it was an accident on the ski slopes at the Heavenly Ski Resort in Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe, I'm in vidcasting here from Sacramento, California, otherwise known as Hollywood North or Hollywood for Ugly People. And the governor, Gavin Newsom, is every once in a while he pops into the state capitol here. Anyway, this resort is not that very far away on I-80 up by Lake Tahoe. It's a beautiful area. It's a very well-known ski resort area. And of course, the Lake Tahoe area goes back to the heyday of the 1950s, the so-called Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra had part ownership of a casino / hotel there called the Cal Neva Lodge. And I think he was forced to divest his holdings there because of certain accusations of him being associated with, or the enterprise being associated with, so-called organized crime. And in retrospect, we're seeing here that one group of organized criminals is being moved out in exchange for the current group that's right in place, right here, the Italian, the Sicilian mafiosi, the classic Jewish mafia, headed by, of course, Meyer Lansky, the little man. They were pushed out, and the corporations consolidated their power, and that's where we stand today. Preferably, I prefer personally the wise guys of old, because these were men of honor, these were men of respect, and men of principle, as strange as that may sound. But in retrospect, they were a much better choice for the American society and economy. Now, Sonny and Cher began to fall out of favor. Hard rock started to come in, and rock and roll started to take itself quite seriously. You had people like Jimi Hendrix and Cream and all these great artists who just took the music to an entirely different new plateau of creativity, ingenuity, and seriousness. And Sonny and Cher were kind of moving on. In fact, I do remember, I just recalled as I was preparing for this impromptu talk, I recall being at a outdoor festival, and I can't ever remember which one it was. I think it was in Devonshire Down and someplace in the San Fernando Valley, and or maybe it was Costa Mesa. Maybe it was the Costa Mesa Teen Fair. But this is the heyday of these outdoor concerts before they became giant corporate sponsored extravaganzas. And who was on the list, or on the set list, or the list of guests, but Sonny and Cher? And I remembered it was kind of sad. I remember feeling sorry for Sonny, but he went up there as they were being introduced to an indifferent crowd. This was getting into the hippie period now, where pop music was seen as being bubblegum and being trite and superficial. Secretly, I think a lot of these hippies were listening to this music anyway. I know I was, and I still cherish these tunes. And Sonny Bono got on stage when they were introduced with Sonny, or with Cher, of course, and he said something to the effect that, well, I know that we're not the latest in hipness now, but here we are. And I can't remember who else was on the stage. I think Alice Cooper was there. This is Alice Cooper before he became a pop star. They were sort of an underground group at the time. Those are the only two groups I can remember from the teens. So anyway, I'm telling you this is because they made the transition into television, network television. I think it was CBS. And they had a 4-season run as the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. This lasted from 1971 to 1973. This is a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen. Or some of you may be watching who were around at that time, which congratulations for lasting. And the opening theme song for the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour was, as I alluded to earlier, was The Beat Goes On. It has that classic bass riff, boom, 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 boom. And that was written on the spot by one of the core members of what's called the Wrecking Crew. And her name's Carol Kay. She's a fantastic bassist. And she created so many hits. And I think all she was getting was premium scale for musicians. I don't think she got any writing credit for that. And so I want to acknowledge her. She's getting a lot of recognition now at this stage of her career. I don't think she's active in the session scene anymore. I don't think the session scenes even exists. The studios are dying, ladies and gentlemen, and the so-called COVID virus is the coup de grace on live music and popular music. And I think that's partly intentional. The music is so important to society. The music and the arts, instrumental, vocal music is so important. It's almost as important as the worship services. And this is where we're being attacked. Definitely no festivals. It's all going to go in the box, just like a lot of music production. So that was the opening theme song. The closing theme song was none other than I Got You, Babe. I think the very last time that Sonny and Cher ever sang it together as a couple was a classic Letterman show. It was Tonight Show, was it? It was the show that was the late night show that was headed by David Letterman, the grumpy David Letterman. I personally always preferred Jay Leno. And before that, of course, nobody could touch the king of late night television. That's Johnny Carson. And I will tell you that I wrote Johnny Carson himself a letter. This is when he announced he was going off the air. Excuse me for digressing here, but I live this popular culture. And I also lived in the area where I can go to the studios and I can meet certain entertainers and go to venues and see a lot of great shows. But I wrote Johnny Carson a letter telling him what he meant to me as an individual for all those years, especially those well-written monologues that were incredibly funny. And I mention these monologues because these people like Stephen Colbert, this guy, there's some import from South Africa. I don't know what these foreigners are doing on American television. They're Jimmy Kimmel, he's one of the worst. These people have become unfunny. Now, Johnny Carson was a highly intelligent, very sensitive, politically astute person, but he would never abuse the franchise that bore his name in such a way that these opportunists are being forced into. I think they're smarter in their own in their own right, but if they want to host these network shows, which are dying out anyway, this is the accommodation that they have to make. Anyway, I wrote Johnny Carson, and the last week of the Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, of its existence, I was invited on as a guest. I was in the audience, not for the last show, because I think that was reserved for network executives and close relations to the crew, the producer, Freddie DeCordova, maybe Doc Severinsen's family, and of course, Johnny Carson's family and friends. But I did get to see, I think, the second and third to last show of The Tonight Show. And Farrah Fawcett was one of the guests of the show. And I was with a friend of mine named Carl Boggs at the show. He had a hot date right after that, so he wasn't really that interested. He didn't get interested in Hollywood, even though he lived near Hollywood. He lived in Santa Monica. He didn't get he wasn't interested in movies or any of the popular culture until much later. He wasn't interested in television for sure. So I would have been better off probably bringing someone else who could enjoy the watching the making of a live television program. So anyway, getting back to the Sonny and Cher comedy hour, and Sonny and Cher as a couple. Towards the end, they started the marital frictions really started to become extreme, and they would have been renewed for a fifth season had it not been for their impending divorce. And during that time, they had a couple of children. One of them was, you might have heard of her or him now. They had a daughter called Chastity, who would be brought on the Sonny and Cher comedy hour every once in a while. Later on, Chastity transitioned to Chaz and wrote a book about it. And there might even be a document. I have the book. I've read it. It's really, I was kind of surprised in that Cher, I thought she was a flaming liberal, but she took this news of Chastity becoming Chaz very hard. And it took her a while to get used to the idea. So that's the backstory of the Sonny and Cher comedy hour. And of course, Cher went on to bigger and better things. And I remember I was in New York at the time, that big hit, Believe. You couldn't get away from it. And that's really the world's first exposure to so-called auto-tune. And now you can't escape it. That vocal with the strange distortion, distorted mechanical robotic voice. That's called auto-tune. And of course, she, even before that, she had and I respect her as an actress. I think her acting skills are great. Moonstruck with Nicolas Cage, incredible. Let's see, she was in the film with Norma, Sally Field. I can't remember the film. It was based on a story of a woman that was murdered for being a whistleblower at a nuclear power plant. Some of you can supply the information on the chat there. So I explored this a little bit further. I looked at the Tahoe Daily Tribune of 2001, an article by Bradley Foster, and says the headline reads, "Tabloid says, quote unquote, thugs killed Sonny Bono." And I said, oh yeah, I remember that news. This was in my notes going back a few years ago. And the article by Foster is dismissive of an article that appeared in the Globe. And the Globe is one or two cuts below the better known National Enquirer. It's a tabloid. This is those papers that are sold by the supermarket checkout lines. Remember checkout lines before the lockdown? You used to stand there, right? Wait till you get checked out, and you could kind of browse the magazines and the tabloids. Globe was one of them. And I've always had a fondness for the National Enquirer in particular. And by the way, the founder of the National Enquirer, just as an aside, his name is Gene Pope, Generoso Pope, another Italian-American. And according to established fact, the National Enquirer was an outlet for the Central Intelligence Agency to leak out certain pieces of information. Maybe the Globe had a similar function there. And as we know today, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and any number of legacy media have been shown to provide this function for what is now called the deep state. That is, they are an arm, a propaganda arm of the corporate captured American political system. So Sonny Bono, and this fits in with the Sonny Bono's death years later, years after his death in 1998. Sonny Bono, representative of Sonny Bono, was killed at the Heavenly Ski Lodge near Lake Tahoe, as I explained. And according to this article, I've already told you, he's described here as an entertainer and a U.S. congressman, and I think he was also a very savvy businessman as well. He died of massive head injuries after skiing into a tree. Now, if you kind of look through the celebrity morgue files, you'll see a pretty good number of celebrities or political figures who perish in ski accidents. I think ski accidents are second only to airplane accidents, right? So there's seems to be a pattern here, and of course, people do die of ski accidents all the time who aren't celebrities. Now, here's where it gets interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Most of you who are watching this channel are acquainted with a former FBI agent by the name of Ted Gunderson. He died a few years back, and the claims he was making way back when, before conspiracy theory became cool. Now YouTube is full of it, and we have all kinds of newbies who are discovering the moon. All of a sudden, they're teaching us, oh, did you know that the Kennedy assassination was a plot by X, Y, and Z? Yeah, I think we know that by now. And part of the reason why I'm doing these casts now is out of my frustration with the YouTubers who YouTube enjoys all this giant echo chamber that's become. So I'm going to endeavor, I vow to present a new, unique analysis and information here, because I'm really tired of the biters and the plagiarists on YouTube. Anyway, some of you who read that material, good for you, know the name Ted Gunderson. And in a headline by the New Musical Express, this is a British paper, it's a music paper publication, similar to, I guess, Rolling Stone, which used to be good. Now it's a globalist rag and mouthpiece. The headline reads, FBI agent, that is Gunderson, FBI agent claims Sonny Bono was murdered. And quoting the article here, doesn't give a byline here, it's just New Musical Express, April 9, 2008. It says, Ted Gunderson said Cher's former husband was targeted in a politically motivated assassination in January 1998. Continuing the quotation here from the article, Gunderson said hitmen hired by top U.S. officials moved in on him because Bono, a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and they present that parenthetically, they'd rather play up the fact that he was the ex-husband of Cher, not that he was an elected member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Remember, this is a British rag as well, right? So who knows who they're connected with in the intelligence agency in Britain, because we know that a lot of the publications there are very much controlled by British intelligence, and they've sent some of their assets, like Anna Wintour, to the United States to head up Condé Nast publications and to present a certain worldview for the American women that's consistent and very much sympathetic with the British Empire 2.0, which we're seeing right now. We're trying to break free of it for the third time. The first time was the American Revolution. The second time was the War of 1812. And the third time is election 2020. We're living history. We're living it. Isn't it wonderful? And little did we know that Sonny Bono, Salvatore Bono, the great Italian-American patriot and artist, is coming from the grave to help us expose what this system is really about. According to this article, it says his claims, quoting, his claims are reportedly backed by several top forensic experts who are unnamed here. Another article headlined, and again, it refers to Ted Gunderson, and I'll get more into Ted Gunderson in a moment. It gets more interesting, so don't go away, right? In fact, call more people in here and forward this video to as many people you know. Subscribe to it. Also, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe to my Patreon. You're going to get extra fan service, I promise you. And I'm going to be putting that money into bigger and better projects. My event, I haven't told anybody this yet except for you, but my ultimate plan is to host a variety show, such as very similar to the Sonny and Cher comedy hour. That is, there'll be music, song, dance, as well as chat with interesting individuals. So I'm going to bring back the variety show, but I'm going to start modestly here on YouTube before they either deplatform me or a major producer approaches me with a decent arrangement. Anyway, FBI agent Ted Gunderson says, the headline reads, Sonny Bono was clubbed to death. Tragic rocker Sonny Bono was clubbed to death by a hired hitman, according to a stunning new tabloid expose. And this is the Globe article that I alluded to earlier. An investigator who had been researching Bono's 1998 fatal skiing accident for the past decade claims top officials linked to an international drug and weapons ring feared the singer-turned-politician was about to expose their criminal acts, and so they had him killed on the slopes. Now, Cher, of course, and this is probably why she was allowed to enjoy such a great career subsequently, but Cher denied that this was anything other than an accident. And of course, she and Sonny had been divorced for some time by that point, and his widow, Mary Bono, not coincidentally, took his place in Congress upon the death of her husband. And that seems also to be, I wouldn't call it a pattern, but it's happened more than once in the U.S. Congress. One of our local representatives here who died of a fast-acting cancer virus, a mystery disease that was not publicized, here in Sacramento, his wife also took his seat in Congress. Anyway, Mary Bono, Representative Mary Bono, later denied that there was any foul play involved. And she said that, well, he was really drugged up and, you lose your judgment. And he was going too fast, 30 miles an hour anyway, on the ski slopes, even though he was by all accounts, an excellent downhill skier. He knew what he was doing. Former FBI agent Ted Gunderson tells the America's Globe that there's more to the tragedy than meets the eye after studying the autopsy reports and other evidence. Now, you're talking about not just an FBI agent, but he ran the Los Angeles division or headquarters. I think their building was on Wilshire Boulevard over by the VA hospital, very close to UCLA. And I know this because I've attended many a demonstration on the lawn area, the open area. It's a federal building. So that was, if you were attending UCLA or teaching there as I was for 1 year, you could access the federal building and express your disagreement for the latest invasion that the U.S. military and the CIA and the corporations have mounted. This was the federal building. I think that's where Ted Gunderson had his offices. Anyway, you're talking about the guy who was at the highest level outside of Washington, D.C., so far as the FBI hierarchy is concerned. He was no disgruntled crackpot renegade off the reservation, so-called FBI agent. Quoting Gunderson, it says, "It's nonsense for anyone now to try to suggest that Bono, I'm sorry, getting confused with the Irish singer, who's also an intelligence asset, by the way." That's another talk, by the way. I've been keeping notes on Bono Houston for quite a while. But anyway, let me go back to Sonny Bono, the original Bono. Gosh, I wonder if Bono ripped off Sonny Bono's name. It wouldn't surprise me, because the bassist Adam Clayton ripped off the identity of the great Irish writer, right? It's nonsense for anyone to try to suggest that Bono died after crashing into a tree. There's zero evidence in this autopsy report to show such an accident happened. Instead, there's powerful proof that Bono, was assassinated. And this would be a political assassination because he was an active member in the U.S. House of Representatives. And finishing the Gunderson quote here, it says, "This was an evil plot that was carried out to almost perfection by ruthless assassins." And according to Bono, the MO, the modus operandus for the death was beating. He was beaten to death, and then they staged a tree collision. I guess that's what would help explain the the trauma to the head. And he wasn't wearing a helmet, according to reports. And again, he was by all accounts an expert skier. And Ted Gunderson himself is calling for authorities, quoting here, to dig up Bono's remains and open a homicide investigation. And finishing the article, Gunderson's efforts have been backed by top forensics experts who fear Nevada authorities were too quick to mark the tragedy as a skiing accident. And investigator Bob Fletcher, they give a name here, who has confessed he sent evidence of a 10-year study that linked top U.S. government officials to arms and weapons dealers to Bono less than a month before his death. Fletcher says he was going to make this his number one priority. There's no doubt in my mind that Sonny was murdered by someone who needed him silenced. Now, of course, there's usual flacks that one of them wrote for the OC Weekly. His name is Gustavo Arellano, and he kind of lumps in Sonny Bono with anti-immigration forces, and Gustavo Arellano is Mexican-American, so I guess he's implying that Sonny Bono is a racist, even though he himself is the son of Italian or Sicilian immigrants. And he lumps him in with the Illuminati. This is all part of the defamation process here, the smearing campaign. This is in the OC Weekly of April 9th in 2008. By the way, the LA Weekly, the OC Weekly, and all these different independent newspapers that were flourishing. I wrote for one. I wrote for the LA Village View and the Weekly. I've submitted articles for them. But they were all bought up by larger corporations because I guess they were voicing too much or exhibiting too much independence. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about Arellano. He's quite a. I like his writing, his comedic writing, his humor writing, but in this case, he's way off base, except where he quotes Gunderson himself. I doubt if he even interviewed Gunderson, but he quotes Gunderson here in saying that, this is Gunderson speaking, "There's no doubt in my mind that you all in Orange County have an active satanic cult." And he claimed, quoting, "At least one satanic group with 13 to 19 members meets in Newport Beach and Laguna areas." And remember, Ted Gunderson ran FBI Los Angeles 40, 60 miles up the 405 freeway, right, from Newport Beach and Laguna. I don't know if that was within his territory, his range, but there's a good chance that he had some inside information about any type of activity that might smack of a Satanism in Newport Beach and Laguna. Now, I went to grad school at UC Irvine. I had a lot of friends and a lot of professors lived up in Laguna Beach area, the Laguna Hills. And I knew a lot of people that lived in Newport Beach. I used to go down to Balboa a lot, the pier. I'm familiar with the area. And I've witnessed and I've seen the enormous wealth and power that's concentrated in that area. And whenever you see such concentrations of wealth and power, it's been my, I've tended to see that there's a high correlation between wealth and power and Satanism, and I'll leave it at that, right? Maybe that's part of the deal. You get to have the yachts and the beautiful homes overlooking the Pacific Ocean if you sign the pact, right? Now, here's what's interesting here. I mean, all of it's interesting, but we're getting to more specific research that I've been doing recently based on FBI. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation itself, based upon recent releases by the agency itself. Now, you've heard of Arellano, you've heard these other people dismiss Ted Gunderson, his claims, because they were crazy. Even people who might have been predisposed to believing such craziness going on in American society tended to dismiss Ted Gunderson. Not me by any stretch of the imagination. Not that I accept his observations on faith. I always check and double check and triple check all claims being made, and I hope you will do this based on this talk here yourself. But Ted Gunderson was vindicated. How was he vindicated? He died recently, as I told, well, a few years ago. He was vindicated because the agency that he once worked for, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, not too long ago released 3 separate files on the group called the Finders. The Finders. And I have a link here. You can find it on your own if you want to put it through your search engine. You could look at the documents yourself. I went ahead, and this is before I even worked on this. Like I told you, I've been researching the Finders for a while now. But I went ahead and bought this book, which is a selection from these files that you can get for free online. And it gives you some information, correspondence, tracking sheets itself. It's highly redacted about this organization that was termed the Finders. And this is the leader, the alleged leader, Robert Terrell, Terrell, who in 1987 was, I guess he was arrested, or he was called to account for his participation in the abduction of children. This is back in 1987, and those files now are available to the American public. So Ted Gunderson has been vindicated in this case. Now, in doing the research, these algorithms take you to some interesting places, and in researching the Finders, I found a feature film, 2016, titled The Finders, and it was on, of all places, Amazon Prime. And as an Amazon Prime member, I got to see it for free. But I did purchase it because I want some of the money to go to the director. I think she's a wonderful filmmaker, very truthful and very honest. And I would like to, I'm going to send her a link to this talk, so please make some comments down below after we're done here. I'm going to try to get her on a Zoom conversation and interview her about the film, The Finders, because I want to see how the film was made. And I wanted the details of how it was constructed and how she came to make such a truthful narrative film in the age of Netflix. And of course, Netflix doesn't carry it, that I can tell. It doesn't distribute it. It only distributes. Well, you know the critique of Netflix. It's part of an intelligence operation itself. Even though I do find a lot of documentaries on Netflix and some of the HBO material that they distribute to be quite good, but some of their homegrown products are quite distasteful, to put it lightly. Anyway, The Finders. Let me talk a little bit about that. I watched the whole film. It's 70 minutes long. It's directed by a woman by the name of Tracy Lucca, Lucca, another fine Italian American, like Sonny Bono, Salvatore Bono. Salt of the earth, small town America. Grew up in southern Jersey. And in fact, the opening montage conveys that sort of semi-rural town of Hamilton, which I believe is an actual town in southern New Jersey. There's a sign that reads, "Welcome to Hammondtown," Hammo. That's probably was the founder, Hammond Town or Hamilton. And it's listed as the blueberry capital of the world. And I don't know if she intended this or not, perhaps so. Directors are always sending these messages to us, subtextual messages to us. But under the sign, "Welcome to Hamilton, the blueberry capital of the world," you have those little insignias that you always see going into a small town. There's the Masons and there's the Lions Club. The shields are mounted right below the welcome sign. Try to go by these one day. Just look at the sign. You've seen them everywhere, right? Just stop and look at them and break them down. These are hidden in plain sight. They're marking off turf for themselves, right? It's a municipality. It's a city, yes, but it's also much, much more. Don't stare too hard. You might become what you behold, as they say in the Bible. Anyway, there's a parade. There's Christian statuary being carried through the residents, or by the residents on the parade. Roman Catholic, I assume. I think it has a very large Roman Catholic Italian-American population down in Hamilton. I'll find out if I have the good fortune of interviewing the director myself, Terry Luca. She also wrote the film. Now, the opening scene after the montage showing how perfectly small-town America Hamilton is, the mayor of the town, her name in the movie is Monica Messina, played by, let me give her a shout-out, Tracy Carson. She's an excellent actor. In fact, I'd like to ask Tracy, Tracy, the director, Tracy Luca, where she found such wonderful acting talent, because it was beautifully acted, just wonderful. Anyway, Monica Messina is the mayor of Hamilton, and she is in a convenience store with her son when there's an attempted abduction right behind her back, and the vigilant store owner caught the woman who was trying to abscond with the mayor's son. He was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old. So before you know it, the FBI is called in, the local police, because the crime had not been committed. The woman was apprehended and taken to jail. But all of a sudden, Monica Mayor Messina was facing an FBI agent. They bypassed the local police. They bypassed the New Jersey State Police, and she was kind of shocked by that. But at this point, she didn't suspect anything. And then about 18, 20 minutes into the movie, she is visited by an individual who, as he leaves the conference room meeting with Mayor Messina, reveals himself to be a CIA officer. And prior to that, he's implying to Mayor Messina that she had made up the story so that she could get attention and perhaps some sympathy for her election campaign. She was running for U.S. Congress. So he's skeptical of that. He'd already written the report. He just slides, it's pre-written. He slides to it and just walks out of the room with utter contempt for her, the mayor of the town. So Monica Messina, highly intelligent woman, starts putting it together, and someone had put a manila folder up against the door of her home, and she pulls it out. There's some documents, a message to her, and a USB, a thumb drive. And on the thumb drives, there's audio files and there's some document files, just like document files, right? And so she starts listening to the audio files in her home, and when she's out jogging. And this is interesting. It was kind of a shock of recognition, because the first voice you hear on this audio file is none other than Catherine Austin Fitts. And if you don't know who that is, you better check her out on YouTube. She's a wonderful thinker, and she's spot on her. And she's also a financial wizard. She had also been attacked by the financial establishment, the Wall Street Barracudas. Really took it to her, but she eventually prevailed. Right? We can win these battles, ladies and gentlemen. Catherine Austin Fitts is a winner. She's also the editor of the Solari Report. And full disclosure, I was a guest on her show a few years ago, and subsequent to that, we met in the little town of Davis when she was passing through. She was going to visit some clients, I think, in the Bay Area, San Francisco, California, and whatnot. And so she stopped over in Davis, and I bought her lunch and thanked her for her incredible efforts in combating corruption in the Capitol, because she was also a pretty high level appointed official in government. I think she worked in undersecretary of treasury, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but she knows all the goings on. She knows about the theft, the trillions of dollars that have been stolen from the public treasury, and she's devoted her life since then to try to explain to everyday Americans like myself about how this process unfolded. Oh, I also saw Catherine Austin Fitts at a conference a few years ago that was emceed by Henrik Palmgren of Red Ice Radio. He's kind of gone off into a nationalist type of trip now, but back then he was still very much of a solidly grounded journalist who was exploring interesting phenomena like the secret space program. And Catherine Austin Fitts gave a talk along with people like Joseph P. Farrell, another great author rather. Richard Dolan was there, another fine author. It was just incredible. She was there. I met her briefly as she was coming off stage. I gave her my business card. And she doesn't remember that encounter because she was just coming right off the stage. And later on, we met again on her program, and then later at UC Davis. Anyway, that's a sidebar here. It's interesting how these stories intersects with one's own life. So Mayor Messina goes on a local television show. She reveals herself to have been a graduate at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Catherine Austin Fitts, by the way, is also a University of Pennsylvania grad. She went to the Wharton School of Business at Penn, where also President Trump went to Wharton School, and I think he graduated at the top of his class. President Trump is he has it. It runs in the family. The Trump family are brilliant people. His uncle, in particular, and his father, of course, is a developer. So anyway, Messina says on his show that this public access program, that she probably interrupted the exchange of a boy that looked very much like her own son. It was a case of mistaken identity. And as they were challenging this woman who was trying to run off with her own boy, she saw a black SUV speed off after the handoff went awry, right? And later on, it was revealed to the mayor that the woman that was trying to abduct her son committed suicide while in custody. And then later on, the surveillance recording that was taken of the altercation also disappeared. So she reveals this to local television, and this is a good, I think, promotional nod to independent television, citizen journalism at its finest. So then, I'm not going to go through the whole movie because I'm running out of time here, but she receives another manila envelope. She's invited to meet a mysterious messenger at a local lake. He turns out to be a fellow Italian American, Sicilian more specifically. And he is a fixer. He is a person that makes sure elections go in a way that favors the establishment. When I say establishment, I'm not talking about the people that you see in office, like a Joe Biden or an AOC. I'm talking about the people behind them. So Mayor Messina's kind of mystified. Why would you want to help me? Why me? And the mysterious messenger says, I really draw the line where it comes to children. I said, no children, absolutely no children involved. So at that point, he swears allegiance to Mayor Messina and saying that he will help her through this, what she's about to experience, because he's seen it all, because he's helped orchestrate some of these types of transactions. And hopefully one of these white hat individuals who've been on the inside are now in the process of rescuing the rigged election of 2020 for the American people. That's why in coming to this film today, while doing this research, it was so fortuitous. It was providential, I would have to say, sharing this information with you. There's something mystical about coming across this movie that gives us so much hope. So anyway, an older man comes and visits now Congressman Messina. She wins the election. He sits her down. He doesn't identify her himself, but he says, listen, all you have to do is leave certain subjects alone. Namely, don't talk about the attempted abduction of your children. Don't talk about child kidnapping. And then he promises that she'll have everything she ever wanted. She will be Washington's golden girl. This is what the gentleman promises her. So then she, by the end of the film, I'll skip some, I don't want to be a spoiler anyway, so I recommend that you watch this great film on Amazon Prime yourself. You can rent it for $2.99. Anyway, there's a moment where Monica, now Congressman Messina, has to wrestle with her conscience. Is she going to go the way of the mysterious stranger who gave her the offer she could not refuse, or is she going to hew to the trajectory of her Italian American roots, right? An America first love beyond all the glitz, the glamour, the material rewards that are being promised to her. The filmmaker is much too skillful to give us an easy, feel-good answer. We're left with that dilemma kind of hanging in the air, so that we, the viewer, the audience, can wrestle with this moral dilemma ourselves. And I prefer that, because this is really, for us, this film, the filmmaker has given us a gift of self-questioning, which we Americans can use a lot more of. Most of it's prepackaged like a Happy Meal, and here, have this. Here's a pill. Here's a smiley little jagged pill. Take it here, take it. It's yours. And it's very simple. It comes in the form of a TV dinner, a Hungry Man TV dinner. So the film ends, appropriately enough, with the Ephesians chapter 6, line 12, that speaks of spiritual wickedness in high places. Spiritual wickedness in high places. And that is indeed, ladies and gentlemen, where we are today as the year 2020 comes to an end. And it's really up to the American people to decide whether it will submit, whether it will concede to the spirit of evil and allow the American Republic and all the beautiful generations that have preceded us of immigrants, as well as Native people, more recent arrivals, refugees, whether we together as Americans will allow our republic to be stolen right from under us by these dark forces, right, which will be named as an investigation unfolds through the year 2021. Because whatever happens, the inquiry's not going to end. The films are not going to be stopped making. All the music artists, except for Eric Clapton and the Irish singer, songwriter Van Morrison, all the artists that have bowed down to the tyranny and to the lies, eventually they will also join the march towards truth and the recovery of their own countries, their own nations, their own societies, their own cultures. Interestingly enough, the film ends with some captions, and it shows me that the filmmaker, Ms. Tracy Luca, did her research. The summary reads, and I'll read it verbatim, it says, many independent researchers have come to believe that one of the functions of the finders was organized child trafficking in America. These children were provided to powerful politicians in Washington, D.C. in order to create, quote unquote, control files on such individuals so they would forever be compromised, blackmailed, and therefore controlled. And she leaves us, the audience, she leaves us with the question, were the finders real? You decide. And then as she gives the credits to, of course, Catherine Austin Fitts, she credits the great investigative journalist, Mark Passio, another great Italian-American patriot. Jordan Maxwell has been around for ages, and for many of us was our initiation to this world of signs and symbols that rule the world. And of course, the great writer, investigator, Nick Bryant, who wrote the fine book, you've got to read it, The Franklin Scandal, which talks about this whole child abduction network. And she also cites, Tracy Luca cites the Franklin cover-up written by John Van de Kamp. He himself was a elected official. He was former Nebraska state senator and attorney by trade. And she cites the documentary that was never released. It was made, but it was never released. It's titled A Conspiracy of Silence, directed by Tim Tate. You might have some difficulty finding this. I think it's been removed from YouTube, but it's worth an effort. It'll give you a great deal of the context under which this film was made, and it really will help us understand what's really at stake here in the election of 2020 going into 2021. So I'm going to leave it there at this point, ladies and gentlemen, and just to show you how fortuitous and how providential my day has been, and just starting out reading Sonny and Cher. Come on, the beat goes on, right? I mean, Sonny and Cher. How serious can that be? To show you how providential my day has been, I just happened to pick this book off the shelf as I was preparing for this talk to you this evening. It's titled Answer to Jung, as in Carl Gustav Jung. And tomorrow, I'm going to read this book tomorrow. And I'm going to come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. because I know my friend John O'Loughlin said he was going to take the day off. If he does show up at 5 p.m. Pacific time, I'll reschedule it to 7. But anyway, sometime tomorrow, I will talk about this book because it's the perfect follow-up to the discussion today. And I also encourage you to join my Patreon so that you can help fund my purchase of this book by Carl Gustav Jung that was released a few years ago called The Red Book. And it was suppressed for many years. And the reason for the suppression is that, according to this author, her name is Lynn Brunet. She's an art historian down in Australia. She says that the Red Book by Carl, and this is going to shock a lot of Jungians, of which there are many, many, many people. It's going to offend a lot of people, which is part of my role in life, I guess. She said it bears all the earmarks of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And she argues that a lot of these people, these insane creative geniuses, that they have one connecting thread, and that is what she refers to as trauma-based mind control. Well, she doesn't use that phrase, but I'm using the phrase that's in common circulation here. So anyway, she has her own experience. Her own father was a Scottish Rite Freemason and a Rosicrucian that had subjected her to some incredible behavioral regimes. So I'll discuss this tomorrow. This is a really good continuation of today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been an hour now. Please share this video far and wide. Please subscribe. I want to get my subscriptions up to 100,000. And I wanted this channel to grow to the point where I can get that variety show going that's going to be like the Sonny and Cher comedy hour. Lots of comedy, lots of stand-up, a lot of humorists, a lot of dancing, a lot of song, a lot of jugglers, a lot of puppeteers, real American entertainment. Thank you very much. I wish you a happy New Year 2021, and I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. Good night.